Shaquille, you tell me how you pronounce your name because I'm not going to get that right.
It's Shaquille.
Shaquille, hi, and you want to talk about why would God be okay with the concept of money? Take it away, ask your question.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about, it's just that question sort of pondered upon me. I haven't really spoken about it with anyone, so I thought I'd try and speak about it with you. So I thought about like the commandment of don't steal and the old one that says the love of money is the root of all evil. But then I thought, why would God be okay with the concept of money in the first place? So like, why? How did money come to be? And then I theorized that it was over just a finders keepers situation thousands of years ago. But why would God be okay with that? I find it a bit weird. I don't know what your thoughts are about it.
Well, from and it's hard to say from a theological standpoint, because of course there are many different gods and many different theologies spread throughout the world, and that have changed over time. But from a theological standpoint, I think the only kind of thing we've got to go on in answering this question is kind of looking at the religious texts. And of course, God laid rules down about all sorts of things in religious texts and seems to have changed his mind over time. In fact, the Christian apologists would say those Old Testament rules were laid down for the people at that time. Why he seemed to have a penchant for kind of doing what he wanted next minute and then holding them to rules the next, I don't know. But yeah, there's not much to go on from a theological standpoint on the question. The other part of the question or the thing you were asking, I find much more interesting in from an anthropological point of view. And that is, how did it come to be to start with? And I think that's, I think it's a natural progression from just trading, when different groups of hunter-gatherers, and then later in the Neolithic, when these tribes started settling down into cities, they were trading with each other. And it's a natural kind of thing to do when someone's got something you want and you've got something they want. It makes sense. It's very practical to trade with each other, and of course over time that became money. And rather than trading goods with each other, we started trading a currency, a thing that in different parts of the world may have been different things. In some places there were shells, in some places it was gold or various other metals, and things that as a society people found intrinsic value in, and that became the agreed upon commodity. And I think that's where money came from, and that is very, very interesting to me. That's more interesting to me than why would God be okay with the concept of money, because it doesn't really have any theological kind of background to assess that thing on. I think the closest thing I can get is kind of in Buddhism, and obviously we're not talking about a god, but we're talking about in Buddhism an ethical kind of system what is beneficial to getting you towards enlightenment, and there are things which draw you away from that. And money in that sense is seen as something that you can form an attachment to, and something which will make you kind of less inclined to go on this path towards enlightenment. Ben, Scott, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, money, when it comes down to it, really is just something to facilitate trade. What like Richard was talking about, is we exchange money in place of, like, for example, I'm a teacher. If I want some potatoes from a farmer, for example. That way I don't have to go and teach them calculus or something like that. We have an intermediary, we have a substitutionary exchange, right? Instead of exchanging the actual goods, we trade something that represents those goods. And I would think that especially something like Christianity, which is based on substitutionary atonement, it's based on satisfying debts through an intermediary. So I would think that, a God in that kind of a system wouldn't have a problem. I mean, they would understand that, things can be exchanged in place of the actual thing whether it's a matter of convenience or whatever. And so I don't see any reason why a God wouldn't want to facilitate trade between, the people. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. It's a very detailed answer that I wasn't expecting, but I understand it.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to this one other than I don't know if it's the money itself that God would be opposed to, but it is interesting how the God of the Bible seems to be opposed to hoarding of wealth, yet a lot of modern Christians seem to miss that part. But
yeah, it's like with churches, you say, you ask the church for help, and the church asks for help, and they ask for money, but when you ask for help, they ask you to pray. So it's like it's not the fairest of trades.
Yeah, and of course there were some churches and some religions, outside of Christianity as well, that kind of give a recommendation for how much you should contribute to the place of worship, and sometimes these recommendations stronger than other times. But yeah, it's an interesting question. It's one to be honest with you, I'm not 100% on the answer to. I think I'm not a biblical expert by any stretch of the imagination. Anyway, my religion stuff comes from elsewhere, and it's only in the last 5 years or so I've started looking at Christianity from a kind of scholarly perspective. So I've still got a lot to learn myself on the subject. But yeah, it's definitely any kind of new line of inquiry I think is good. So, bringing up a question like this, which we wouldn't normally get asked, good on you. And, I welcome more questions of this nature that kind of invite further investigation and further learning. So if you find anything else out on the subject yourself, feel free to give us a call back and educate us.
Oh, for sure. Thank you.